Hi everybody, I'm Melanie Shapiro. I'm an immigration lawyer in Massachusetts. We represent over 65 different countries and have offices in Norwood and in Worcester. Today I'm going to talk to you about what you can expect at your marriage interview. First of all, you'll receive a notice in the mail that tells you when and where to go for your interview, as well as the documents that you should bring with you. Usually, you should bring your original marriage certificate, any birth certificates, any passports or other identification documents you have, and you have a chance to bring more evidence to show that you have a real or bona fide marriage. Sometimes this includes a photo album. I always have my clients bring a photo album and go through it with the officer. Your updated bank account statements if you have a joint bank account. You can bring updated statements with you, updated tax returns, if there are any big purchases that you have, or any additional evidence, like if you have a baby that has just been born, you can bring that with you to the interview. So when you go to the interview, you're going to check in and present your interview notice. You'll be asked to go sit down in the waiting room, and then an officer will call you in for the interview. Now, don't freak out if you get called in separately. This is standard practice. Usually the officer will call in the U.S. citizen first and ask them some questions, and then the immigrant will come in second. So when the U.S. citizen goes in, or the green card holder goes in for the interview, what the officer will do is place them under oath and then begin to ask them some questions about how you met and about your relationship and about your life together. And I have a list of potential questions that I give to all of my clients, and this is something that you can go over with your spouse before the interview, but it's just mundane stuff like, how did you meet? Who proposed? It could be, what did you do for dinner last night? How did you get to this interview together? Did you drive separately? Or what is your spouse's work schedule? Have you met their family? How many windows do you have in your bedroom? Or what color toothbrush does your spouse have? So it can be a real range of questions. And the purpose of all of these questions is for the officer to determine whether or not this is a real or fake marriage entered into only for the purpose of immigration. So it's really important that if you do a marriage petition, that it is a real marriage. For example, I had a client who was arrested for marriage fraud, and she served a year in federal prison. So it's really important that you only do a marriage petition if it is a real marriage. So the officer, after they interview the petitioner, the U.S. citizen or permanent resident, the next thing that they'll do is they'll go into the waiting room and they'll bring in your spouse. Sometimes they ask you to go back out into the waiting room, or sometimes they will allow you to stay while your spouse is interviewed. And this is really just dependent on the interviewer's style. So don't worry if you have to go back out and wait for while your spouse has their portion of the interview. It doesn't mean anything. So when the immigrant spouse is brought into the interview, they're also going to be placed under oath, and they're going to be asked the same questions that you answered about how you met and about your relationship, to see if there are any glaring inconsistencies or any issues. So, for the most part, this goes well. If there's any issues, usually I prepare my client if I think there are any red flags beforehand. But so your spouse will be asked these questions, and then they'll also be asked questions about their application. So the I-485 is the green card application, and if you're filing that with your I-130 marriage petition, then the officer is going to ask your spouse about that too. So these are questions about whether or not they're admissible to the United States based on criminal history, based on health concerns, based on security issues, and a whole bunch of other questions. And then that's also going to go over your spouse's history with addresses, employment, and so forth. So after all of those questions are asked, the officer might indicate whether or not they're going to approve that petition. And if the officer approves the petition that day, then you'll see it reflected on the USCIS website when you check your case status. Sometimes the officer will say, I'm inclined to approve this, however, I need to run additional security checks. And that's totally normal. That's generally how it goes. But then if the officer has any concerns, they're going to have to review it with their supervisor, and then you'll have to wait for a decision. And it could take a couple of months to get your decision in the mail. if your case is approved and that same day or right thereafter, you're going to receive your green card in the mail within a few weeks to a couple of months. So that's what you can expect at your marriage petition interview. Thanks for watching my video. I'm Melanie Shapiro. You can subscribe to my channel on YouTube. You can follow me on Facebook and on Instagram.